Hey everybody, it's 21 questions. I am Tish Hicks. I'm the Master Sensei at the VO Dojo, and we are really excited to welcome Keythe Farley here to answer 21 questions with us. So, Keythe, here we go.
Tish, thank you. It's so great to be here. Thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this all week, so glad to
Yay.
be doing it.
All right. Well, here we go. First question. What is your one-word check-in today? How you doing?
Uh, prep. I'm in preparation mode. I got a stack of scripts today that I'll be directing tomorrow, so it's today is all about preparation.
Excellent. Where are you from?
I'm from California. I bounced around a little bit. I was born in Stockton, California, lived in Fremont, Long Beach, Sacramento, before I moved to Los Angeles in 1985.
Fantastic. It sounds a little like a Beach Boys song. Where do you live now?
I'm in North Hollywood, very
Excellent.
happily in North Hollywood, much to my 30-year-old me's surprise.
Funny how things change, huh?
I was a Hollywood boy. I lived on the other side of the hill, and I thought, never, never in the valley. But I love it. I absolutely love it.
Excellent. And you've got your beautiful studio there.
Yeah.
What would we know your voice from?
You probably know me as Thane Krios from Mass Effect 2,
Mhm.
Kellogg from Fallout 4. Right at the beginning of the game, I steal your baby and kill your spouse. And you gotta find me and hunt me down. And then of course, generic male 5 from Guild Wars 2.
Aha.
Because that's the life of a voice actor.
Indeed.
Sometimes you get to be the big baddie, and sometimes you're just generic male 5.
Excellent. Who's your current team? Who helps you with your with
I'm with
um
Dean Panero Talent.
mhm.
Love Dean. I was with Special Artists for years, but that's an agency that sort of grew and contracted. Um, and I was, I think, the last person that they held on to for their scale department as they
Mhm.
were sort of contracting again. And then Dean picked me up while he was at Abrams. And
Mhm.
then he lit out on his own, and I've been with him ever since. Love the man.
Excellent. Yeah, he's been my agent on my journey as well, and he's excellent.
Yeah.
Most excellent. Tell us about your setup. I know you have a fantastic,
This is the
fantastic.
VO Lounge. This
Mhm.
is the lounge part. I built this 4 years ago to sort of focus, like you do, on teaching. And it's was really fun when we could get 8 butts in these seats and teach. But since the pandemic, the couches are lonely.
Two butts most.
Yes, exactly.
And no butt.
Or no butts.
No butts, yeah.
Mostly. And then back behind the computer here is my booth, which is fully decoupled, floats on the floor, doesn't touch the ceiling or the walls.
Mhm.
Um, Pretty darn quiet. I have a Sennheiser 416 and then a large diaphragm condenser mic, the Warm Audio 87, which I like a lot. It runs through an Apollo Twin into my iMac. And
Ex-
my DAW is Reaper, which I
mhm.
absolutely adore um, because it's simple and light enough to do just the day-to-day voiceover audition stuff. But then
Mhm.
when I want to get fancy, like when I'm producing my podcast and we're doing radio shows like the one that you appeared in this month,
Mhm.
it allows me to do more full-featured stuff, to be able to
Right.
add effects and extra tracks and really produce demos too. When I'm producing demos for people,
Mhm.
Reaper comes in really handy. And it has only one time crashed in
Oh.
10, 12 years of operating. And anybody who works with Pro Tools knows that's a multi daily occurrence with Pro Tools.
Excellent. So the good old reliable. And it sounds like it serves you in the many functions you are part of the voiceover world as talent, as producer, as demo producer, and casting as well. Is that because you'd have to sort through?
Yeah, normally with casting, it's a little bit more file based. I mean, I
Oh,
just
right,
sort
right.
of
Not pro. Yeah,
dragging
that makes sense.
folders and,
Mm. Any computer
narrowing,
will do.
just pulling things over into A, B, and C folders, and yeah,
Right, right, right.
that. So,
Yeah. Well, you have such a
but Reaper is a wonderful program, very reasonably priced, um, and fully functional and stable as heck.
that is fantastic. That is
I'm very happy with it.
excellent. Well, would love to hear about your VO origin story. What's your VO origin story? How did you get started?
um, it's funny because I was thinking about this, and I think the first earliest memory I have is of my dad's cassette deck. Back in like the late 60s when I was just a wee lad. And the microphone, and I could record myself and then listen back, was magical to me. And ever since then, I've always loved recording things, people, sounds. I'm a huge audio head.
Mhm.
I know the world through my ears.
Yeah.
Um, and I know there aren't as many of us as the people who know the world through their eyes, but I'm a listener. So
Yeah.
that was kind of the beginning, my earliest memory of VO. And then it's always just been something I've been interested in. Once I discovered radio theater,
Yeah.
I totally was entranced with that. And then working, which we'll talk, I guess, a little bit about later, being in production at Klasky Chupo,
Yeah.
they would record the actors, and then as a production coordinator, they'd bring me the cassette that would say episode 103 radio show. And that was sort of the aha moment for me of realizing, like, aha, this is where radio theater landed, is in animation. So we do the radio show at Klasky. It was radio show first, and then the board artists would sort of create the show from there. Now I know at Hanna-Barbera and Cartoon Network, they kind of work the other way, where the board is created first, and then the actors are responding
Mhm.
to that, which is fine too. But that was a big aha moment for me, in voiceover, was realizing that, oh, there are radio shows that are being produced here at this animation company. And so that sort of was a way in for me to the career that I have today.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. What do you think are the top three ingredients of your success?
I think it's dramaturgy,
Mm-hmm.
understanding how stories are told and how stories work. I'm also a writer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I think it's technical precision, understanding your instrument, and being able to
Big
clearly
instrument, right?
convey things
Mhm.
through your voice and what you can do and what you can't. Um, and then emotional availability, also being able to portray emotion. So
Mhm.
understanding story, being technically precise and emotionally available is kind of
You can make anything out of those ingredients.
pretty
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Super cool. I'm a little skeptical of this term, but what would you say was your big break? I don't know that anything actually breaks, but I think there is
Sure.
sometimes there is a moment where you're like, aha, now. Like so, however you want to um I do think we have to be careful with the semantics of that big break.
Right.
But however you interpret that, what do you think is like, what where did you?
Well, I think there are two for me. One was when my wife Anne um, told me that I should take the PA job at Klasky Chupo,
Mm-hmm.
and at 30 years old, to suddenly go from being a part-time, semi-successful TV and film actor to being a PA, was a bit of a hard pill to swallow.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what really led through those 3 years later. I was voice directing Rugrats.
Wow, excellent.
So being able to learn production at an animated company like Klasky,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to work my way up that ladder and to understand how cartoons get made. Um, and then having them recognize that I was better suited to the creative side than the production side. Um,
Ah, interesting.
it was a mutual realization. I was getting the work done, but I was totally stressed out doing
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they were kind enough. A couple of folks recognized that I might be someone who could talk to actors. Um, and the next thing I knew I was in the room with Kath Soucie and E.G. Daly and
Yeah.
Tara Strong and Christine Cavanaugh, God rest her soul.
Yeah.
Um, so that was a big break for me that I didn't really see at the time.
Mm-hmm.
The other was in '06. Um, the Actors Gang theater company that I belonged to.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Robbins was directing a production of 1984. And I was not planning to be in that show, but I wanted to show up to support the folks who were
Mm-hmm.
workshopping it.
Mm-hmm.
So I went out to dinner and I read the script and I found it amazing. And then I went to this workshop and a buddy of mine came up to me and was like, "You got to get up. You got to read Big Brother. We've got to hear your voice as Big Brother." Um, and so I did. I got up and had one of those rare experiences that we have as actors where the role plays you. And I felt like I just got out of the way and just let the words do the work. And it was an amazing experience being on stage and workshopping in that way. And Tim approached me afterwards and offered me the role.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember coming home that night and Anne was already in bed and she said, "How'd it go?" And I said, "I kind of feel like this is a break for me."
Mm.
I just had a sense of it. And so we played 6 weeks at the Actors Gang. But then the show went on tour, and I ended up being able to play uh, Athens, Greece,
Wow.
and at the Opera House in Melbourne, and at the Opera House in Hong Kong, and at opera houses in Barcelona and Madrid and Bilbao, and all over the country. And so that show, about 6 years on the road,
Wow.
off and on with that show. And then we sat down here in LA in '08 at the Red Cat, which is down at Disney Hall. And I sent out some postcards like you do, like, "Hey, come see me in the show." And agent at Special Artists saw me in the show,
Mm-hmm.
signed me for commercial work. And I said, "You guys have a VO department?" And she said, "Yeah, let me take you down." And I met Kelly Marie, who was running the VO department. And they put me up on Voice Bank, and I started working as a voiceover actor at
Right.
that point.
Yeah. Well, that's just, I think Actors Gang is where we first crossed paths. And then it wasn't like you just were like, "Hey, what's this Actors Gang?" It's the gang that you've been a part of creating stories. And so I think that's what the way you just described that, it was like the next opening, right? It's like
Right.
what you've been doing, and then you walked through a door that was the next opening that you didn't even know what was on the other side. And then here's this, like, "Oh yeah, yeah, we're putting on a show," and then it was the next opening, right? Both two around. Wow, that's fantastic. And I
Yeah.
do have to say that just getting to work and play with you the other night, and listening to the podcast when it aired, I was like, I could listen to Keythe all day long, all the time. And now,
Thank goodness, because if I was getting on your nerves, I wouldn't be very good at what I do.
and now I'm just hearing double plus good, double plus good.
Double plus good. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Um, so it sounds so that opened up voiceover as I always talk about it, we always talk about it at the dojo, but diversifying your performance revenue portfolio.
Hmm.
So do you think of it, is there a moment when you started VO to making your full-time living in VO, or has it always been a blend? It sounds like it's been a blend of different
Right, it has. I'm a writer, director, actor, and I sort of
aspects.
rank them by income.
Interesting.
Like if I'm, there was a period of time where I was an actor, writer,
Mm-hmm.
director.
Right, all right.
And then as I got in at Klasky, and then I wrote a show called Bat Boy the Musical.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the end of the 90s into the aughts. Was I was a writer director, acting took a back seat.
Mm-hmm.
And then in '06, it sort of acting sort of came back and writing sort of fell off.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in '08, directing really came back strong. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a constant back and forth between the three. I'd say now I'm probably director, actor, writer. Still doing all three pretty regularly, thanks to the podcast.
Yeah.
Um, but not a lot of revenue coming from that at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But doing all right as a director and doing well as an actor. So
Right.
I can't complain. I'd say from the time that I started at Special Artists in '08, um, it was probably a year and a half,
Mm-hmm.
2 years before I booked that Hornitos
Mm-hmm.
tequila series of spots. And that alone probably could have carried me for a couple of years.
Yeah, and I like to I like to ask that question because when you're on the journey and you're like, like this doesn't, it's a gestation period and it happens and you keep on it and then yeah, so it's good for everyone to hear that.
I was really lucky in that when I first came down to Los Angeles in the early '80s, I ran a little daycare program with a friend of mine who'd moved here. And he
Hmm.
was like, "Hey, you want to take this summer camp?" I was like, "Yeah." So I had this great deal where I lived with him and I was making a little bit of money and I had no overhead at all. So I just
Hmm.
got to be in LA and I was only working like from 8 to 2 or 8 to 4,
Good
daytime.
time.
So I went out at night and soaked up LA. But I also found this magazine about the actor's journey. There was an article in there that said that most actors will, it takes you a while to book your first job.
Hmm.
And then once you do that, it it may be a year before you book the second job and the third and the fourth. And then it starts to snowball from there. So I had really very realistic
Hmm.
ideas about what my career path would be like um, as an actor. And that
Hmm.
proved to be true when I was on camera. Uh, I booked a gig, and it was almost a year before I booked another, but then I booked two or three that year.
Hmm.
And then I was making a living as an actor, by 92, 93.
Right.
And the same thing happened with voiceover, that it was sort of like, who's this guy? Who's this guy? What's going on? Um, and then once it sort of clicked, and then it's always up and down. I mean, some years it's like, wow, I could live on that, and other years it's like, thank God I do other things,
Right, 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 right.
because it's it's unpredictable.
Yeah, yeah, which is a reality. It's like, yeah.
That's the reality.
Um, yeah. Oh, I think you talked a lot about what else you did while you were doing you were there. I think you covered that question really well in unfolding these other questions.
I will say though that when I needed a dead end job just to make ends meet, there
Hmm.
was nothing better for me than delivering food.
Oh, interesting. Back in the
Uh,
day, before that was even a thing.
right. Well, I was lucky enough to work at Louise's Trattoria, which
Oh
was sort of an
yeah.
upscale, um, upscale-ish chain restaurant
Mhm.
here in LA. And this was pre Postmates and pre
Mhm.
Grubhub. So the delivery fee that the restaurant was charging went to me,
Oh, nice.
plus the tip. So there was no app that was taking
Hmm.
30% or 70% or whatever. I don't even know what they take. So I
That's
made good money
the
and I
golden
worked.
age of food delivery.
Right, it was. And there I was delivering in Beverly Hills and West
Right.
Hollywood and Larchmont,
Hmm.
Los Feliz. And I was able to construct my schedule such that I worked Thursday night, Friday lunch, Friday night, Saturday lunch, and that was enough to live on.
Right.
So I
Right.
went to work on Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening, and worked straight through till Saturday afternoon. And Saturday night, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, all day were mine.
That's great. And I think that's the other thing, that as you're developing your business and your career, then you do what you got to do. So,
Right.
yeah.
And just to cram it all into 48 hours
Right.
in the
Right.
week was the best because then I was just able to do whatever I wanted um, in all the other time.
Right. Right. What are you proudest of in your voiceover career?
I think it's Final Fantasy 15,
Mm,
I think, which was a project that I was uh, fortunate enough to be able to cast and direct,
hmm.
and was given a lot of leeway and freedom to do it like I wanted to do it.
Mm,
Um, Sometimes in some of those localization projects, there's someone who's sort of sitting over you and trying to make sure that the localization matches what was recorded previously in another language. Um, but the translator and sat down with me one day and just said, you know what? Let's just pretend that we're creating this game in English. What would
mm,
it sound like? What would it feel like?
hmm.
I want the localization to feel as if it was a native language, which means, and we did rely on the actors, the very brilliant Japanese actors, for context, for volume level, for intensity, for timing, certainly.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but I felt like I had the freedom to be able to do it in a way that felt right to me, that
Hmm.
sits with my ethos as a director and a performer. And also the fact that I was able to hand out parts to 327 actors over
Yeah.
the course of 4 years was a joy.
Yeah.
When you could just find out, okay, somebody needs a check. Okay, bring them in. Um, it was great. It was a really, really beautiful experience.
Yeah, I hear in everything that you share and talk about is like somehow creating content, like it's creating something, bringing forth. I mean, I guess that's what we all do here, but the force is strong in you.
Thank you, Tish.
What's your biggest fear or challenge when it comes to your voiceover work?
I think it's something that something I wrestle with a lot is that imposter syndrome,
Hmm.
you know, that feeling that maybe I'm not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I've just been lucky. Um, but when you get to an age, I think you start to go, okay, well,
No one's caught me yet.
these things have happened. They can't all be flukes.
Right.
You know what I mean? It can't just be a fluke because I've seen the flukes. I've worked with, you know, with folks who are here today, gone tomorrow.
Hmm.
Um, and the fact that I've sort of stuck it out really helps to deal with that.
Yeah.
To deal with that those times when you're just like, and those lean times, you
Right,
know.
exactly. When you start going like, wait a minute, I know what I'm doing. Do I know what I'm doing? Oh no, do I know what I'm doing?
Yep.
Oh, and it's understanding that it's not necessarily
Yeah,
related.
it's that it's
Totally.
I've been dealing with like the idea of inertia lately, and it's the idea
Mhm.
that when the ball is rolling, an object in motion tends to stay in motion, but then when it comes to rest, it needs an external force to get going again, right?
Right.
So when it comes to rest, I have a tendency to be like, oh, shoo, this is going to be great. I can do whatever I want. I can sleep in. I can, enjoy my time. And that goes on for 5 to 7 days. And then I start to go, oh, well, I guess it was a nice run. I had a nice run. I guess now I'm gonna, go back to
Yeah.
delivering food again.
I so understand that. um, would you say you are an introvert or an extrovert?
It's interesting because when I took the Myers-Briggs personality inventory,
Hmm.
I was a split.
Hmm.
I was a 50-50 IO
Hmm.
or IE, introvert, extrovert. Yes.
Hmm.
I was an IE. Um, right on the cusp.
Hmm.
And I think as the years have gone by, I've probably grown more introverted.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, I still love a good party. I still love working with people. I still love the interaction, the FaceTime. But my wife is a red line extrovert,
Mm.
and I am not that. I
Right, right,
need
right. So you balance,
I need to
you
pull
find
back.
your definition in relation in your relation. Like your definition of self has shifted as your partnership. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I think I've just grown a little more introverted. I think I just need more recovery time
Yeah. Well,
when I'm.
I think that like in pandemic times we've all had to become. And I also think that it's interesting that your effortless step into this world. I do think that that is one of the things that we whichever wherever you lie, coming to the blend is something that's really required in your voiceover business and career, right? But
Yeah,
the part that we live in a box and then the part where we have to meet everybody and stay in touch with everybody. So
yeah.
yeah, yeah. um so I know thumbs up, great shout out for North Hollywood. If you could do voiceover from anywhere, where would it be?
I think a lot about the foothills of the Sierra Nevadas.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot about like about 3,000 feet, just when the trees are starting to get nice,
Yep.
but not so high that where I have to shovel 10 feet of snow. You know what I mean?
Right.
Dust the ground every once in a while with snow, be lovely, watch it melt. Um,
Close enough
and
to the Bay Area if you needed to drive, or close enough
right,
to come down here.
I love that area, always have. My family lives in Sacramento.
Uh-huh.
So if you go out of I-80 or I-50 into the foothills from Placerville,
Mm-hmm.
Jackson, the sort of gold rush
Mm-hmm.
cities, all the way up and out to Auburn, Grass Valley, Nevada City. That
Mm-hmm.
whole little patch on the side of the Sierras at about 4,000 feet is really appealing to me. And
Yeah.
the desert. I could
Mhm.
I could also I could go
Plenty
desert.
of places.
I'd go for a dome home in Yucca Valley or Joshua Tree. High
Yeah.
desert would be nice too.
Cool, cool, cool,
I
cool.
wouldn't leave California for nothing.
Yay. In your bones.
Yep.
Yeah. What would you say your VO motto is?
I think it's states and stakes.
Ooh, interesting.
States and stakes.
Like emotional.
Understand what's at stake for the character,
Hmm.
and then what emotional state does
Ooh,
that engender in you.
that's a good thing.
Being able to
That's a
dig
really
in,
powerful.
because I'm a character. I mean, I do my share of commercials and
Mhm.
stuff too, but really my focus is as an actor. And as an actor, it's always about what's at stake for your character. What do they want?
Mhm.
And then how does that make you feel?
Right, right.
Whether you're getting it or not. I had a workshop that I taught one time where it literally was on the audition sheet. It said, if they're winning, they say one of these 5 lines. If they're losing, they say one of these 5 lines.
Ooh,
And I
wow.
thought, that's pretty much it.
That's it. That's it. Yeah.
In a
So,
nutshell, that's what we do. We go after something, our character goes after something that they want, and they either get it or they don't. And that's going to determine how you perform.
yeah. And that makes me my heart and brain go back to the work with the gang, with the comedia, which it just being all of that, being able to go foom and so deep and so true, even in uh stylized. It's not artifice, it's stylized in a certain container. But that, that being able to go so fully into any of those states at any of the stakes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow. Yeah.
Because that's how you get to performances, for broader comedy cartoons, SpongeBob, Fairly Odd Parents, is
Hmm.
an investment in what the character wants that goes to such a level that the expression of those emotions can go through the roof. They're
Exactly.
all sincere. Mr. Krabs wants money. He
Right.
just wants it to a ridiculous extent. And that's where the comedy comes from, is
Right.
this obsession with money that he has.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah. And
it
that goes back
helps.
to the dramaturgy, right? Because you
Right,
can just go back to, oh, why don't we go to 1500s? Oh, look, it's the same character.
right.
Yeah.
States and stakes. It's
Yeah.
how what's at stake. How deep is that commitment to what you want? For
Yeah.
Mr. Krabs, it's the stakes could not be higher.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Ooh,
then the states can be as full as you can imagine.
yes. They go deep so they can go. Yeah.
Right.
That that's brilliant. Yeah. What is your daily VO practice, or what is a typical day like? You mentioned that you're in preparation at the beginning, but what is a typical voiceover day for you?
Depends on what I'm doing.
Hmm.
If it's like a day like today where I've got 3 or 4 scripts that I've got to prep for tomorrow, um, it's a lot of reading, and I try to again take good breaks so that I'm really soaking up the
Hmm.
material. I just find that being able to sort of work for a little bit, break for a little bit, come back to it really helps me sort of soak it up.
Hmm.
Um, and some days it's all day directing.
Hmm.
So I'm right here. And again, I'm a big believer in breaks. I like to work for 50 minutes an hour, take 10. Come
Mm.
back fresh, cup of coffee, glass of water, walk around the yard a little bit, come back with a fresh head. Um, and I believe in that. If I'm acting, if I'm looking at auditions, I'm, looking at scripts and making choices. And I usually, to warm up, I usually sing a bit,
Hmm.
sort of move through from songs in my lower range, songs to my mid range, some stuff that gets into the falsetto and way up high, just to sort of warm it up and open it up. Um, Lots of water. Um, because it's you got to have it.
Hmm.
You got to have it. You got to stay hydrated. Um, and then yeah, getting in the booth and playing states and stakes.
Ta-da! That's it. Yeah. Knowing what you know now, what would you say to yourself at the beginning of your career, your journey?
I think active listening. I
Hmm.
think that when I was playing video games or watching cartoons in particular, I think I would have encouraged myself the way I encourage my students to
Hmm.
listen actively and identify characters that you could play and
Hmm.
then work on them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the rules of the of voiceover here too. Listen carefully on all of those layers. And what you were saying earlier about you're probably drawn to this work if you're someone who does this work and is inexorably drawn toward it, it's probably because it makes a lot of sense because you process the world that way.
Right.
That's how you take it in. So yeah.
And I would hear announcers. I've always sort of had the ear for the announcer. Like I'm always,
Mhm.
okay, I could do that. But as an actor, a voice
Mhm.
actor, to be able to listen more closely and more carefully
Mhm.
um, when I was coming up, I
Yeah.
think that would have been
Yeah.
wise.
Interesting. Well, now you know.
Now I
Now
know.
you know. Okay. And last one, and then we have to improvise. We have to improvise one more question because it
22222.
2222. So
Gotta
we
have
can't do
20,
21 questions.
22 questions. Gotta
So
have
well,
22.
here's 21. What's your next goal, desire, voiceover, or otherwise? Seems like the mountains, the 3,000 foot, like that was, I could see that. I could see that already. But what else? What else are you here for? What?
I think I would love to. I'd love to be on an animated series. I get to direct them from time to time,
Mhm.
but just knowing that you have a steady gig,
Excellent.
you know, just to know that like Wednesdays are taken,
That's
is
cool.
always that sense of of just knowing that there's a gig next week.
Yeah, that's cool. And then, and then ideally, like you think of what that impact is, right? You've gotten to work on projects like Rugrats that is now like generations and then the next generation, but it's still so in play, it's still so applicable and so of of the human condition that it lives on for generations. So yay.
Yeah, yeah, all that stuff I think is where I'd like to be. I'm very happy where I'm at. I mean, I don't really. I just think like, okay,
Okay.
okay. It's funny because I do a lot of work. The podcast is really about. Um,
Oh, and say the name of your podcast.
it's called Live from the Lounge with Keythe Farley. And if you want to find it on your podcast platform, we're on Apple, we're on Spotify, TuneIn, iHeart, all of them.
Mhm.
Better to search my name, just
Mhm.
Keythe, and it pops right up. There were a couple of other Live from the Lounge podcasts that came and went, and so you'll get lost. Just
Right.
Keythe. But the theme of the podcast is basically, I say, grooving with the rhythms of the seasons and
Mhm.
understanding where we are in February, that it's dark and cold mostly. It's okay to if you have a little seasonal affective disorder, to want to hibernate in
Mhm.
January, February. Perfectly natural. Once we get to March, we want to spring into action, and
Mhm.
then growth happens in the spring. Growth continues through the summer months, and we're mending fences and tending our fields. And then the
Mhm.
harvest of the fall, leading back to a gratitude and
Mhm.
a celebration of the accomplishments of the year at the holidays. So once I sort of clocked that and started thinking about goals and not jumping in January, but taking time in January to plan and think about
Mhm.
and what I was going to plant, when the time came, and then being able to grow a career with that idea of farming, with that idea of planting seeds in the spring, tending them in April so they don't get frozen or
Mhm.
flooded, and then enjoying the blossoms and then kind of just letting it grow in the summer and kind of backing off and maybe taking a little vacation. Um, and once I started doing that, it was a neat way to sort of think about goals career wise. And they've all mostly been career wise for the last 25 years of my life. But now I'm starting to think about goals that are quality of life goals.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, what do I want, you know, for my kids and my kids' kids? What do I want? How do I want to spend the next, 15, 20, 30 years that I have left?
Mhm.
How do I want to leave? Um, and all of that is part of it. So it's been interesting that my goals have sort of shifted and are in the process of shifting from conquering a career to being like, okay, what am I leaving? What do I want to leave? So teaching,
Yeah.
some of the work I've done with SAG-AFTRA
Mhm.
um, is part of that. Is like leaving the world better than you found it. It's the Boy
Right.
Scout in me that wants to clean things up and make sure things are people are taken care of, and everyone gets a chance to at least survive and thrive.
Yeah.
So those are my goals. Now it's
No.
less, like I said, the career thing is sort of like, yeah, it's been great, and I'm sort of still in the midst of that, but
Right.
also sort of I'm in that transition to like, okay, well, what do I want to leave?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's powerful. And I think it's interesting as you're like when you look back on like, oh, if you're looking at that from the very beginning, that's an interesting thing too. Like we don't even see it from the very beginning, right?
Right.
Um, yeah, wow.
But it's a life. The seasons are like the days are like a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
There's a period of birth, growth, withering, death, new life.
And I think we get really disconnected from it because we can binge everything, get anything, anytime. There's not a sense of that inherently in the cycle of the world.
There's a time to binge.
Yeah.
There's that time of abundant growth when things are just
Right,
like,
right,
whoa, those seeds I planted. I remember my dad bringing in like 1,000 pounds of zucchini one year.
right.
He had a garden that just would not stop producing zucchini. We were
I want to see that.
binging on zucchini in July and August. That happens.
I want to see that cartoon.
Right. But it doesn't happen in December.
Right, exactly.
It doesn't happen in the middle of the night. It doesn't happen at 3 in the morning.
Right.
But so there's a time to binge and a time to reflect.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm sort of want to accept it all. And every day is an opportunity to sort of check it out again. Because the sun comes up, it gets to the middle of the day and it's warmer, and then the light starts to wane, and we go through a period of darkness.
Yeah.
So every day is an opportunity to sort of reconnect with the way the world actually is.
But I don't know if we need any more questions after that because that just really answered everything. Well, that's the answer to everything,
Yeah.
folks. Things.
Yeah.
It is so.
Get in touch with the way the world actually is, and don't be afraid of the dark. It's part of it.
Yeah.
It's part of it that
Yeah.
you're going to go
Inside
through
and
periods.
outside, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You're gonna have periods of you're gonna start something new. It's gonna take off. It's gonna grow. It's gonna wither, and then
Mhm.
something new is gonna come up in its
Yeah.
place. So
Wow. Well, this has been a wonderful, wonderful journey with you. Thank you so much
thanks, Tish.
for taking this time and sharing this time. And we'll look forward to seeing you on Ask the Sensei at the beginning of March. Perfect way to spring forward, right?
Indeed.
Yeah, excellent. And you shared the podcast. How can people get in touch with you otherwise?
I'm at KeytheFarley.com, and it's Keythe Farley, Farley.com. All my contact information is there. Live from the Lounge podcast.com. If you don't have a podcast player, you can get it online there. And that's where you find me
Excellent.
electronically, digitally.
Well, we'll look forward to getting to have a little bit more time and answer people's questions on Ask the Sensei soon. And
I look forward to it.
yay, thank you so much.
Thanks, Tish.